Biden signs an executive order to limit the use of Chinese cranes used at American shipping ports. These cranes gather data on the nation's economy and may even be remotely controlled by China. More than 150,000 people will no longer have to pay their student loans. This comes in the wake of the Supreme Court shooting down President Biden's $400 billion loan forgiveness program. We'll tell you who's eligible for the new funds. It's going to cost you much more to fly as airlines are raising their checked bag fees. Now, the airlines say inflation and rising fuel prices are the reason. Frozen embryos are now considered children in Alabama. That's after the state's Supreme Court ruled that they have the same legal rights as unborn children. But the move is facing pushback. How does foreign funding influence American universities? A Heritage Foundation research fellow says the move and the money undermines American interests. Donald Trump's proposed energy policy shift, if implemented, could reshape the European Union's energy landscape. This would favor the EU market with a return of fossil fuel energy and benefit European countries purchasing American natural gas. Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Jack Bradley. President Joe Biden signs an executive order today tackling Chinese spy cranes. Now, the cranes make up nearly 80% of all the cranes at U.S. ports and have been seen as a national security threat for years. Logistics expert Ross Kennedy says that these cranes are loaded with sensors and cameras.
If someone were to be reading the data feed from what's on that crane, every single container, they're going to know broadly what should be inside that container, what it weighs, where it's going off of the vessel, and and then being able to stitch that together with knowing ultimately where that product's going to go. If you take data that's coming off these EPMC cranes, what you then begin to be able to do is really quantify the health of the entire economy of the United States by knowing what we're truly shipping and what we're not shipping, what we're importing and not importing.
Kennedy says that these cranes can be remotely controlled. They can choose on a container-by-container basis what they will and will not load. So if the U.S. were at war, China could remotely shut down these cranes, and there's nothing the U.S. could do about it. Now, former intelligence official Michael Sikora says that the data the cranes provide would also help China in a time of war.
The intelligence game, the data collection and analysis, is a big jigsaw puzzle. Okay, there's this misperception that there's a couple really key pieces of data. It's buried deep inside a country, inside a vault. If you look at the ports, and if you're tracking what hardware comes in, where it's going, you can see from a commercial sector what's going on. You can also see from a military perspective in terms of what units are there, what size they are, what sort of gear they're getting in for training, which then strongly indicates exactly what they're expecting to be deployed.
Biden's executive order invests over $20 billion to help build cranes in America. And the U.S. Coast Guard is taking more action regarding these Chinese cranes, though no details were given. Today, the Biden administration announces it will forgive $1.2 billion in student loan debt. Now, it will clear the debts for more than 150,000 people who enroll in a new repayment program. The Saving on a Valuable Education, or SAVE plan, will cancel debt for those who took out less than $12,000 in student loans and have been paying them off for 10 years. Now, this comes after the Supreme Court blocked Biden's $400 billion student loan forgiveness plan last June. The High Court saying the president needs authorization from Congress for such a high cost. Since then, the Biden administration has skirted around that ruling by using other avenues to forgive student loan debt, like income-driven repayment plans and public service loan forgiveness. New York State Attorney General Letitia James had some strong words yesterday on the fraud trial ruling against former President Donald Trump. Now, James says she's prepared to seize Trump's assets, including his skyscrapers and other New York property, if he's unable to find the cash to pay off the over $350 million fine. A New York judge last week ordering Trump to pay the fine after ruling that he committed repeated and persistent fraud. The judge said that the former president overstated his net worth to obtain better loan terms. Trump denies all wrongdoing and is appealing the fine. He's accusing James of bias. Now, Trump's appeal of the judgment may focus on his argument that there were no actual victims from the alleged conduct in the case. The Alabama Supreme Court ruled on Friday that frozen embryos can be considered children and that they have the same legal rights as unborn children. But the move is receiving pushback, saying it could impact fertility treatment, in the state. Now, NTD's Dave Martin has a story here.
In the majority 7-2 ruling, Justice J. Mitchell wrote, "Unborn children are children, without exception based on developmental stage, physical location, or any other ancillary characteristics." The decision was issued in response to wrongful death suits brought against a fertility clinic in Mobile in 2021. It was after a patient broke into a freezer containing embryos and dropped a number of trays. The ruling allows 3 couples to sue the facility for wrongful death. Some critics say it could have sweeping implications. Dr. Paula Amato, president of the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, said the ruling will discourage healthcare providers from providing fertility treatments if those treatments may lead to civil or criminal charges. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
As the flow of illegal immigrants continues, Democrat-led states and cities are using millions of dollars from federal COVID-19 relief funds to aid illegal immigrants. Research shows that more than $517 million from the American Rescue Plan Act was allocated to support illegal immigrants in Democrat-led states and cities, including Washington, Illinois, New Jersey, Chicago, and Denver. The funds were generally used for direct cash payments to illegal immigrants. The report by the Economic Policy Innovation Center criticizes this as the Biden administration's direct subsidization of illegal immigration under the pretense of COVID-19 relief. The funding came from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, intended to aid local government pandemic recovery efforts. And Democratic states and cities are about to see more immigrants coming their way from Texas. Now, the Lone Star State is allocating nearly $150 million to transport more than 100,000 illegal immigrants to cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C. Initiated by Governor Greg Abbott in April 2022, the effort aims to mitigate border state burdens. The state's tough stance, including erecting barbed wire barriers and restricting federal access, is contributing to a 50% drop in southern border arrests from December to January. Support for Texas's efforts to control its southern border is coming from other Republican states like South Dakota. Governor Kristi Noem ordered National Guard troops to deploy to the south border. Now, in a statement yesterday, she said, quote, "The border is a war zone, so we're sending soldiers." Noem said 60 of the state's National Guard troops will deploy to the U.S.-Mexico border later this spring. The deployment is on a rolling basis for a 3-month period. She says that the primary mission will be construction of a wall to stem the flow of illegal immigrants, drug cartels, and human trafficking into the U.S. This deployment will be South Dakota's 5th since Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a call for help in combating the growing immigrant crisis at the state's border. U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded 2.5 million encounters at the border last year. Also in Texas, police there have a suspect in custody in connection with the death of a girl who went missing on her way to school last week. Investigators have charged the family friend with murder. Her body has been found, and police say 42-year-old Dawn Stephen McDougall, who sometimes took Audrey Cunningham to school, was already in custody on an unrelated assault charge. NTD's Jason Blair joins us with the latest on this story. Jason, thank you for joining us. What's the latest on this case here?
Yeah, Jack, 11-year-old Audrey Cunningham was on her way to school to the school bus on Thursday at 7 a.m. and she never made it. She was, last seen on that day and has been missing ever since. There was a Amber Alert released on her. They were searching, started the big search on Friday. At one point, they were able to find her backpack near a dam. And then just yesterday, actually, authorities announced that unfortunately they did find her body in the Trinity River in Polk County, Texas. Now, they do have a suspect in custody. The he actually is said to be a family friend of the Cunninghams, and they do believe that they have enough evidence to charge him with murder. Here is the district attorney actually talking about that right now at a press conference yesterday.
At this time, we believe the appropriate arrest warrant is going to be for capital murder in the death of Audrey Cunningham.
Jason, now how were they able to locate her body?
So the Polk County Sheriff did say that it was a bit of a cumulative effort from, cell phone data, videos, photos they were able to get from that. They did get a lot of support from witnesses and people on social media. And they did actually have the suspect, Don Stephen McDougal, in custody already on an unrelated felony charge. And he did allege that some of the information they got from him while in custody did help them narrow down a couple of areas of interest. And eventually they were able to find, her body in the river. They also did say that the Trinity Lake Authority were able to lower the water, which did greatly help them, in their search and able to eventually find the body.
Did they locate a cause of death here?
So far, they have not talked about any details of the cause of death, possible cause of death, or the condition of her body. They did say that a medical examiner is currently examining, and they will not release any information until that is complete.
Well, Jason Blair, thank you very much for that update.
Thank you, Jack.
Air travelers checking bags are being hit with a price increase from two major carriers. Discount airline JetBlue and American Airlines are the latest to raise their fees for checked bags. Both American and JetBlue are increasing the cost to check bags on domestic flights. Earlier this month, JetBlue raised the price of your first checked bag by $5. It's now $35. For your second bag, it will also cost you $5 more, going from $45 to $50. Now, American Airlines is following suit, announcing that effective immediately, the cost for travelers flying coach will see their checked bag fees increase by the same amount as JetBlue. These fees do not impact international travel, travelers flying first class, or those who are members of each airline's loyalty or frequent flyer programs. The airlines say inflation and rising fuel prices are the reason for the increase. The rise in the number of protests on college campuses due to the Israel-Hamas war is raising concerns about foreign funding influence. For decades, America's universities and adversaries have used a variety of financial means to gain political access to U.S. institutions of higher learning. NTD's Andrew Thomas speaks with an education expert at the Heritage Foundation to discuss how the issue threatens American interests.
U.S. adversaries buy influence at American universities through donations, research grants, foreign student tuition, and other means. A recent report by the Heritage Foundation describes how this foreign funding impacts higher education at home.
Are there any parts of American university or campus culture that foreign adversaries are trying to exploit?
So they're influencing the research that is being conducted, the coursework, and the kind of more informal student intellectual life. They are directly and indirectly influencing all of those activities.
Many of today's college students will become the next generation of leaders and innovators, and U.S. adversaries are looking for any opportunity to influence them and the institutions they attend against American interests.
So disrupting our institutions, degrading our institutions, that alone serves the interests of our adversaries. And so anything they can do to sow chaos, so protests and acrimony are all in service of our adversaries.
So which foreign donors pose the greatest threat to American interests, and what kind of influence are they seeking?
We don't know, and part of what we're trying to do in our report is call for, greater transparency and improved regulation, so that we would have a better picture of who is attempting to influence our universities and to what extent and in what manner.
Green says that Iran, Qatar, China, and Russia are the main players we do know about. China in particular provides research grants in an effort to undermine American interests.
They have been caught numerous times stealing proprietary information, confidential national security information developed in our universities to bring back to China to strengthen Chinese military and corporate interests.
How does foreign funding or foreign investment affect or influence what is taught at American universities?
So it influences what is taught because, in general, anything that U.S. universities do that might be seen as contrary to the interests of large donors or sources of funding, the universities themselves will censor.
Green cites the emergence of certain Chinese educational centers at American universities as an example.
Another way is China has created a series of what are called Confucius Institutes. So these are research and instructional centers affiliated with universities that offer coursework that would be favorable towards Chinese interests.
Green argues that ideas like critical race theory and diversity, equity, and inclusion are foreign imports, rooted in Marxism and Maoism.
These are ideas that are not naturally American. That is, in the United States, we have a tradition, at least an aspiration, of treating every person as an individual and treating all individuals equally under the law.
Green and the Heritage Report's co-authors argue that lawmakers need to pass legislation to ensure that American universities are transparent about the foreign funding they receive in order to protect the national interest. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
When we come back, GOP frontrunner for President Donald Trump's energy policy proposal favors the EU with a return to fossil fuel energy and European countries purchasing more American natural gas. Farmers across Europe and now South Asia are continuing their protests against government reforms on pricing and foreign imports. That and more after the break.
Tangazo hili linahusu njaa. Tarajia kuona watoto wakiwa na njaa katika maeneo haya. Mambo yalikuwa bora kwa miaka mingi. Tuliweza kupigana na njaa na watoto wachache walikufa. Lakini sasa mambo yamebadilika na kwa mabaya zaidi. Hii ni kwa sababu wakati huu ukame umeangamiza zaidi.
Через війни та конфлікти ми мусимо залишати наші домівки і всі наші речі. Ми навіть не маємо їжі. Тому нам потрібна ваша допомога.
Millions of children are fighting to survive due to inequality, conflict, poverty, and the climate crisis. Save the Children is working alongside communities to provide a better life for children. And there's a way you can help. Please call or go online to give just $10 a month. Only 33 cents a day. We urgently need 1,000 new monthly donors in the next 30 days to help the children we support around the world. You can help provide food, medicine, care, and protection, plus so much more that a child needs, by calling right now and giving just $10 a month.
Ви можете допомогти голодуючим родинам вижити.
All
we need are 1,000 monthly donors in the next 30 days. Please call or go online now with your monthly gift of just $10. Thanks to generous government grants, every dollar you give can have up to 10 times the impact. And when you call with your credit card, we will send you this Save the Children tote bag as a thank you for your support.
Toto kote duniani
потребують вашої допомоги.
Your small monthly donation of just $10 could be the reason a child in crisis survives. Please call or go online to hungerstopsnow.org to help save lives today.
Hi everyone watching at home. We're here to remind you that if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, listen up. We have live agents available right now to answer your questions and tell you how much your case is potentially worth. Hi, I'm Gina Bellich, here with spokesman and TV personality Tom Mustin with us in the Help Center. So Tom, phones are really busy over there. Tell us what kind of calls you're seeing.
Well, Gina, first off, thank you for having me here in the call center with you. We always enjoy talking to the viewers and getting folks the compensation that they deserve. You know, we're seeing calls about all kinds of accidents, but the most common by far has been car accidents. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident that was not your fault, give us a call right now. You'll speak with a live person. They'll answer any questions you have and tell you if you have a case and how much your case is potentially worth.
Thanks, Tom. All right, folks at home, you heard it. Take advantage of this opportunity and call now.
Welcome back. Farmer protests in Europe are continuing, some becoming violent as protesters clash with police over what they say are unfair government agricultural laws that impact pricing. NTD's Dave Martin has more.
Indian farmers are delaying their protests for 2 days to mourn the death of a protester following violent demonstrations where police fired tear gas and used water cannons to scatter thousands, staging a march to Delhi. Farmers are looking to raise prices for their products backed by the Indian government. Sparking the farmer protest was a rejection of a plan from the government to have farmers diversify their crops to grow cotton, pigeon peas, and corn. Farmers want additional food grains covered. Meantime, in Poland, farmers dumped Ukrainian-produced grain from rail cars yesterday. Like their counterparts in India and other parts of Europe, Polish farmers are angry over rising costs and what they say is unfair competition from abroad. They're particularly upset at Ukraine after an EU decision in 2022 to waive duties on Ukrainian food imports. Ukrainian leaders say the exports across Eastern Europe have not harmed EU markets.
If he's re-elected, Donald Trump is proposing an energy policy shift that could profoundly impact not only the United States, but also reshape the European Union's energy landscape. NTD's France correspondent David Vivez speaks to one policy expert who says that this would mean a market tilt in favor of the EU. He says with a potential return to fossil fuel energy, Trump's policy will highly benefit EU countries buying American natural gas.
A second Trump presidency would mean a seismic shift in U.S. energy policy, according to Republican policy experts and insights from Trump's campaign. The former president's proposals include a renewed focus on fossil fuel production, which could see the U.S. stepping back from international climate agreements like the Paris deal. Additionally, revisiting vehicle efficiency standards and considering the removal of tax breaks in climate legislation are on the agenda. While this marks a significant departure from the current administration's emphasis on clean energy and climate initiatives, it also has a significant impact on EU energy policies, according to policy analyst Gérald Olivier.
Energy policy will have a considerable impact on both energy availability and energy prices, which will obviously call into question, I would say, the all-renewable approach.
The EU Commission has pledged to mobilize at least €1 trillion in sustainable investments over the next decade. This includes the support of renewable energies and new packages of regulations that span from agriculture to the car industry. However, some green energy plans face backlash due to high costs.
The problem with renewable today is their cost. And if you manage to make fossil fuels unaffordable by making them, I'd say, overtaxed or condemned, you justify a very, very high price for renewable electricity. But if you free up fossil fuel production and bring down the cost of that production, you make other energies much more expensive again than they really are. And you have a new market tilt.
Also, Trump says he would swiftly end the temporary pause on new liquefied natural gas export permits. This will also have a big impact for European countries.
The United States has the infrastructure and the deposits to be, I would say, the world's leading exporter of natural gas. And Europe is the leading potential consumer of this gas.
A new plan to support this import capacity grew by 40 billion cubic meters in 2023, and an additional 30 billion cubic meters is expected to become available in 2024. David Vivez, NTD News, Paris.
A recent brain implant patient is using his mind to control a computer. And Beijing is making its biggest move ever to try to save its troubled real estate sector. Here's NTD's Don Ma with today's business brief.
All right, thank you, Jack. It seems like China is going to make its biggest cut ever to a key mortgage rate. And this is, of course, as it scrambles to revive its ailing property market. The People's Bank of China announced that it would cut its 5-year loan prime rate by 25 basis points to 3.95%. Now, this rate is usually serving as a reference for mortgages. Now, the 1-year loan prime rate, which is a benchmark for personal and corporate loans, will remain unchanged. China's economy, which relies heavily on the property sector, has been hobbled by a downturn in the industry, and that came in 2021 when Beijing cracked down on developers borrowing, which triggered defaults on debts. The deeper than expected cut suggests that Beijing is not as worried about the negative impacts of lower lending rates on currency or banks. There was a muted reaction, however, to the announcement in the markets with the benchmark index, Shanghai Composite, gaining less than 0.5%. Meanwhile, the first person to get a brain chip implant from startup Neuralink can now use thoughts to control a computer. Founder Elon Musk said that the patient has fully recovered and shared the progress on social media platform X. Musk said the person is able to control a computer mouse with his or her thoughts, and the goal is to get as many clicks from the patient as possible. Neuralink successfully implanted a chip on its first human last month after getting approval in September. Back to you, Jack.
Thank you, Don. And thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Jack Bradley, and we'll have more stories from the U.S. and around the world, so stay tuned for NTD Evening News with Tiffany Meyer at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. See you tomorrow.